Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the take for Market Rebellion on this Tuesday morning, and another interesting day yesterday. And why was it interesting? It was because the stocks market really didn't do a whole lot. When you look over at the Dow and you look over at the NASDAQ and you look where they started the day and where they finished the day, almost virtually unchanged. Now, there was some movement in between, but that was even very, very tight. We've talked about some of these days that we've seen of late where we're really not seeing a very large range. As a matter of fact, yesterday the Dow range maybe 120 points or thereabouts, but we finished off about 55 points, about where we started the day. NASDAQ off about 50 points, about where we started the day. But both of those still having a little bit of a shift, but not a whole lot. We had the crude oil got up and over that 60 number. Energy was leading yesterday about this time. And then we started to slip back, and actually crude oil did slip back underneath 60. And that turned into one of the sectors that was not performing very well. So, matter of fact, one of the very worst. I think energy finished yesterday down about 1%. Now, that's interesting for sure. And then when you look at all the rest of the sectors, really not seeing a whole lot of movement across the sectors. As a matter of fact, none of the sectors outside of energy up or down more than about 0.6%. Now, there was some of the other categories, though, the semiconductors, which not a sector, but the SMH, that was down about 1%. You had biotech down about 2%. Biotech has been all over the place, but far more pressure on biotech than we have seen. As a matter of fact, we had that nice rally back for the SMH. So, strength yesterday. Not so much necessarily in the semis, but one name did stand out, and that was NVIDIA. And a lot of that had to do with one of the big storylines yesterday, that competitive CPU chip move that they're going to be going after the AMDs, the Intels of the world. And certainly that had an impact, a very big impact on both Intel and AMD. Everybody seemed to focus just on the impacts that it meant for Intel, which is interesting. But Intel was down 4%. And oh, by the way, Intel on yesterday hit all at least 52-week highs, multi-year highs, not the all-time highs, but very, very close. So the pullback of 4%, yeah, that was dramatic. But you look over at AMD, it's down 5%. For whatever reason, that wasn't getting nearly the same kind of conversation as we were seeing with Intel. So that did stand out for me. The other big news story yesterday, of course, was Microsoft, which had some really nice performance and having really nice performance today, as a matter of fact. But Microsoft and that big buy of Nuance, a $16 billion deal. If you factor in debt, we talked about that as well. Somewhere a little closer to about a $20 billion deal. So another big chunk. And it looks like Satya Nadella continues to hit some really, really nice home runs with some of the acquisitions. If you go back to LinkedIn, that was a monstrous acquisition not too many years ago. I think that was back to 2016. Volumes were there. We had 32.5 million contracts. Again, yesterday we had Apple about 1.3 million contracts yesterday. Tesla, 900,000. We also had Alibaba with about 860,000 contracts. Matter of fact, that was one of the names we talked about here yesterday with some of the unusual option activity. Stock was trading about 240. They were buying the 245s, it's very short term. But that stock definitely just continued to move and plod forward. And I think finished the day close to that 245, around 244 yesterday. So that was something worth noting. I tell you, the volatility index just seems to be stuck right there at that 17 level right now. Now, 17 correlates, by the way, to a 1% move every single day out of the S&P. And as we were talking about, we're seeing a little bit of a tighter market, so we are hardly getting even that 1% move out of the S&P to actually make it seem that it makes sense that we were seeing that VIX right around 17. So could we come a little bit back lower? We certainly could. But there are a lot of things out there and the catalysts out there, including earnings. So let's jump into today. Some heavy-duty pressure on the markets, at least early on. Now, the pressure really coming on the Dow. The Dow was down 100-plus points in the pre-market. Again, on the open, down nearly 200, about 175 points. It's rallied off of that a little bit. Last I looked, we were trading off about 125 points on the Dow. On the other hand, the flip side of that, you look over at the NASDAQ, pretty nice solid move to the upside, actually. Started just to move early, up about 60, 70 points, then about 90 points. Last I looked, it was up about 100, maybe 110 points to the upside, and that certainly had a little bit of an influence on what was a very flat S&P to being up about 5 or 6 points. Now, the sectors that are really standing out, at least early on, the weakest, financials, industrials, definitely had some pressure, down 1% or more on those two categories. Technology, on the other hand, a nice solid move to the upside. What's really some of the names that are moving to the upside? Well, it's Moderna. It's a lot of those other stocks that we talked about all throughout the pandemic, but it's Peloton, it's Okta, it's Tesla, it's Zoom. Those kind of names are some of the names that are powering higher, along with Apple and along with Microsoft. As a matter of fact, Microsoft, where we've been seeing some option activity, looking for some upside, well, that just continues to deliver as that stock continues to power a little bit further and further to the upside. As I mentioned, VIX still just stuck right there at about that 17 level. Now, story of the day certainly has to be J&J, because this J&J pause because of this rollout and some of the issues that are going on. And I think that is some of the biggest concern of the day. There's no doubt about that. In terms of the Dow, that's definitely weighing on the Dow. You throw in some of the financials, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and that's why we're seeing the Dow with some definite pressure to the downside today. Now, let's jump to some unusual option activity. Overstock.com. This is one of those names. We don't see it all that often, but we do see it for unusual option activity. OSTK, 77.35 is around where the stock was trading. We had a buyer of 3,500 of the April 80 calls. These are going to have to move in a hurry, though, and they're only a little bit out of the money. We talked about the stock right around 77, a little bit higher. These are the 80 strike calls going for about $1.40 all the way up to about $2.50, what they were paying for these calls, looking for a nice, powerful move to the upside in that specific name. Now, another one, sort of in the same category, really, VIPS, VIP shops. Now, we talked about this one before last week, and we've seen this hitting a little bit more frequently of late over the last couple of weeks. We've definitely seen some bullish paper in here. Stock was trading underneath 27. It was trading right around 26.90 or thereabouts. They're buying the April 30th, the 32 calls. About 2,000 of those were bought. Around that 45-cent range is where they were paying for those. So inexpensive, kind of a cheap shot. You're getting a little bit of extra time because these are going all the way out to the expiry cycle of April 30th. So it does allow some time for this stock to definitely move and make a powerful move to the upside. So we'll be keeping an eye on that one. That's one that I've talked about, as I said before, just last week, because we've seen so much activity there. Folks, knowledge is king. You're going to want to have that knowledge. If you need any kind of education, certainly Market Rebellion is one of the places you can do that. You can find it in books. You can do it in a lot of different places. But if you want to have a great experience, you're definitely going to want to understand the options world better and better and better. And we're all learning each and every day. I've been doing this since 1992. I'm still learning throughout every single day some new different way to do something, and it just continues. And I encourage you to do that as well and get educated if you can. 32.5 million contracts yesterday. We continue to be well over that 30 million number, and that just continues to be something that's very, very strong. Have a great day of trading. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I will not be on halftime until Thursday, although yesterday they squeezed me in with this whole Intel story, which was pretty interesting. I think you have to really understand a lot about what's really going on here and the time frame that we're looking at for NVIDIA and so forth as to why I'm still very, very bullish on Intel. But I do think they've got the right person in charge there as well. Something we talked about. That was a really last-minute call that they brought me in. Unless we see that again, I will see you Thursday on the halftime report. Folks, have a great day of trading.